It's been a long time since the Sixers have picked in the lottery, and we had to start looking at all these different college guys and deciding which one we want. And we thought, who better to give us some insight on those players and more than Phil Martelli. Phil, we appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks for including me.
Of course. So, Coach, before we get into the players, what about I guess your just general, overview of where you see the Sixers situation right now. We've had a lot of conversation about maybe turning the page to whatever's next, still trying to light a fire under this. When you're just looking at the Sixers, what do you see?
That's a really good. I just think when you're so incomplete, whether it's McCain's injury or Embiid's lack of availability, Paul George getting hurt, I just think you have to say, what is this? And if you said to me, would you run it back? I would run it back. I don't know that there's a player out there, and I don't know enough about the trades. Their new assistant GM will be on top of it, though. You can be sure to that.
Yeah, I know you approve of that hire.
They'll make sure things go straight. I think in that league, it's really building a new team each year, and I don't know that last year's team really had any kind of continuity to be judged. And obviously, everybody will then say, "Well, then blow it up and do what? With whom?" Maxey wore down with the burden that he had to carry all year. I think that league is truly about having older players and guys who fit together. Can Paul George play with Embiid? I have no idea, and I don't think anybody out there has any idea if they can play together, because they didn't. And then you throw Maxey into the mix. It's a tough spot, though. I mean, it is clearly a tough spot, because everybody that is so passionate about 76er basketball has been through, call it what it was, the process or the rebuild, or however you want to term it. You have a guy that won a world championship on the sideline. You have a guy that was the MVP. There has to be something there. And I know it's hard to say, well, let's see it without changing it. Who are you going to get? You're going to get Giannis? These pipe dreams of getting Giannis with, these trades, and I really would. I would run it back.
So we get the number 3 pick last night. I mean, what a moment in a night where we could have lost the pick completely. But I guess before we get to 3, it seems like, there's consensus at Cooper Flagg at 1, and it seems like there's some consensus with Dylan Harper at 2. What do you think of those two guys?
Well, I think the marvel with Cooper Flagg is this. He should be going to prom, right? He should be going to high school graduation. He classed up at a time, some would say, well, he wanted to be the clear number 1. Well, he was clearly a number 1 and withstood any challenges at Duke. Broom at Auburn maybe was in the conversation for National Player of the Year. He was able to take his team to the Final Four along with other gifted guys. I mean, whether they're going to have 4 guys drafted in the first round. So this wasn't the loaves and the fishes coaching job there. It was managing talent, which is hard enough to do. Flagg is different. And I don't have a concern about Dylan Harper because of his DNA and how hard he works at the game. But just for a moment, if people could pause, somewhere on the checklist with him is, his team did not make the NCAA tournament. Ace Bailey's team did not make the NCAA tournament. And we're well aware around here in Philadelphia, I hope, of a guy that was the number one, maybe he was number one, I don't remember, but his team didn't make the NCAA tournament, and he was a must-have after 1 year at LSU. How'd that work out?
Right.
Not good.
You're talking about Ben Simmons. And by the way, not to forget Markelle Fultz, also
Markelle
a number
Fultz,
one,
way,
and his team, I think, was under 500.
Like, college basketball obviously has changed in that it's older because you had this collision course of the COVID year. Forget NIL. It's pay for play. We had pay for play, the COVID year, and availability to transfer. This was an older year in college basketball. And I know they're both gifted. I saw Ace Bailey maybe 2 summers ago or 3 summers ago, going into his senior year in high school. He dominated a USA basketball tryout. That's the best of the best, playing at the best, not some of this Mickey Mouse stuff with high school all-star games or even summer basketball. When they go to USA basketball, that's where you get a true evaluation of, like, what's the pecking order here? Ace Bailey was head and shoulders above everybody who was at that time a college freshman and a rising college high school senior. So it's there. Does a guy like that fit, or Dylan Harper fit? I don't know enough about that league, to be honest with you, but I do know, like, on their resume is did not make the NCAA tournament as a freshman.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing you bring up, because I was going to ask you about it, and we talk about it all the time, is how can you have, I have a lot of Rutgers fans in my life, and they're pushing Ace. You got to take Ace Bailey, and I just go back to, well, they had 2 top 5 picks, and they couldn't make they couldn't even be 500, and they talked to me about how bad the rest of the team was, and I'm like, okay, but still. It is I don't know if it's a red flag, but it's certainly a yellow.
It raises your antennas.
Yeah. A couple of the other. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Something to think about there, though, is was that a byproduct of available funds? You know what I mean? Like, what were they attempting? And I'm not disparaging anybody. I'm just saying, were they trying to stay under a salary cap when you have to pay these 2? Exorbitant fees for these 2 kids. And this is the thing that really irks me. Those 2 kids were rented for 35 games. How is that right? How can anybody in college basketball say, yeah, well, that's the way it is? It may be the way it is. That's not the way it has to be. But that's a rant for another time.
Well, no, I mean, I think if you were to ask everybody, do you think college players should be able to make money off of their names? I think all of us would say yes. But I don't think any of us imagined that it would end up like this, And
absolutely, positively.
And
they came out with this idea, and here's what they did. They put you at the top of the hill. They said, get in the car and get to the bottom of the hill, and it's going to be unbelievable when you get to the bottom of the hill. But we want to tell you something. Your car has no brakes and no seatbelts. Good luck.
Right. Coach Phil Martelli with us. Phil, just one other guy I'd like to ask you about. We've heard a lot about VJ Edgecombe from Baylor, who is really your prototypical 2-guard. What do you think of that guy?
I'm going to go back to when he was coming through the ranks and you were watching him, and I try to close my eyes and say, well, who is he like? Who is he like in that league? And not just a roster guy. Look, they're all extraordinary. To make that league, you well know, they have to be absolutely extraordinary. But to be in a situation where a guy coming to the Sixers and you're going to say, look, I'm saying we, collective Philadelphia basketball fans, cannot go through this again. And of all of these guys, Edgecombe, to me, looks like that NBA true guard. You're absolutely right. He's got toughness, and I'm following some of this on the combine, like his supposedly out of world experience today was his vertical leap. Now I don't know how that matches up to like going into the Garden, either Madison Square or the Boston Garden. I don't know how that measures up, like how we measure these guys. How about being a basketball player? Is he a basketball player? He is, and he's a bucket getter, which I think separates you in that league.
Well, watching some of the highlights, I can tell you that vertical leap happens in the games because I see him jumping over guys to dunk on them. So, I don't think it's just a combine thing. Coach,
what's
go ahead.
Interesting about that? I've always thought about this, like these unbelievable dunks. They only show up with the rarest of guys in the NBA. Because you know what? There's a man standing down there who's going to go like, nah, not today.
Right,
You're
yes.
not going to get me.
Last thing, Coach, and you mentioned it earlier, the Sixers promoted Jameer Nelson to assistant GM today. Now, what's it like for you to not just coach a guy through a successful college career, see him have an entire successful NBA career, and now move on to what looks to be the beginning of a successful, executive career? You must be proud. What's it like for you to see Jameer's entire life sort of evolve like that?
It makes me, it gives me chills often when I talk to him, and the way that, and we're talking like every 3 or 4 days, and like all of those things. Yes, extraordinary player, Mount Rushmore of college players in Philadelphia, 14 years in the pros, and now he takes this path, and he came along and they said to him, well, figure out how you're going to do this in the G League. And he did, and he's the general manager. And isn't it ironic that 2 years ago they won the G League with Jameer Nelson as their general manager? Chester High won a state championship. Why? Jameer Nelson was on the court. We were the number one team in the country. Why? Because we had Jameer and the others didn't. Now he's the GM. So choose your path. Choose your path. And always remember, this is a young guy from Curlin Street in Chester. And of all of the things that he's done professionally, the most extraordinary thing about Jameer Nelson that we should all follow is he is a remarkable father. A remarkable father.
Coach, we really appreciate your time. It'll be interesting to see what the Sixers do, whether they take somebody at 3, whether they trade it, whatever they do. But it'll be fun looking at college players again to see which one will be on the Sixers. We really appreciate your time today.
Thanks for including me. Means
yes,
a lot.
of course.
Thank you.
Yep.
Coach Phil Martelli.